It's about trailers and stuff. Yeah. First one I did was about comedy, and I basically searched around the internet and certain books to find, well not certain books, just in a magazine, to find what different kinds of conventions there were for a comedy. And so kind of, usually in a comedy there's a mistaken identity. So, I mean, the classic example is in Measure for Measure by William Shakespeare, is where there's two sets of twins and they're mistaken for one another, and it's quite comical, apparently. There's always a coincidence, which obviously some people don't believe in coincidences, so that kind of spoils it a bit. There's lots of hyperbole, which, although it's not usually linked to comedy, it's more kind of linked to the literature. It can be used in a very humorous way. Obviously, it's got to be funny. It's comedy, what do you expect? But it can't really focus on one target audience. It's got to focus on because it's got to make everyone laugh, apart from old people who don't find anything funny. Yeah. Quite a lot of time it's quite sort of class biased. So there's lots of stereotypes that we can laugh at. So usually in comedies, the middle class or the upper class are portrayed as very posh and snobbish and idiots quite a lot of the time. There's always a surprise, and there are many, many different forms of comedy, which I can't list at this time. This is the first trailer that I'll show. I can't remember which one it is. That's this one.
You want? It's 8:15 a.m. It's 18-year-old Scott. You want a promotion? You gotta earn it. Did I tell you that Arkin tricked me into having a drink at 8 o'clock this morning?
Unless your boss isn't sexually harassing you.
See if this thing's working. Oh, I can make out our little friend right there. Ooh, Shabbat Shalom. Somebody's circumcised.
You know, yours doesn't sound that bad.
We need to trim some of the fat. What do you mean by trim the fat? I want you to fire the fat people. You can start with Large Marge.
Marge, can you come in here, please?
What?
I thought he was going to give you a promotion.
Yeah, no, he is.
I have decided who I want to be our new...
Oh.
new Vice President of Sales. Me.
What do you think?
Nick, please, we're in the middle of the meeting. That's all right, I'll just attribute this to your drinking problem.
You would have to admit our lives would be easier if our boss was more alive.
You can fire Professor Xavier.
You mean Hank?
Creeps me out, rolling around all day in a special little secret chair.
I don't care how bad our bosses are. We're not murderers. This little sweetheart right here.
For pity's sake, what?
Here's my fiance.
It's going to get a peek at my little photo album.
You did all this while I was unconscious?
That's my favorite.
I'm in. Let's kill this bitch. We gotta hire a professional.
Does anyone here kill people for money?
I'm gonna be your murder consultant. You want to pull off a brilliant murder? It's not a look like it's an accident. You gotta be smart.
It's gotta be worth what? 15,000. I feel like everything's gonna work out. Look how fast I'm picking out this crap, you know? I'm moving like super fast. I can't even feel my nose.
Finally vulnerable. Peanuts?
That was a peanut butter sandwich. How you gonna deal with peanuts?
Whoa, look at this.
What about Little Jacks? Little Jacks?
My boss, who we're planning to kill, is dying in front of you and you saved his life?
Well, that sounds bad when you say it like that.
I was surveilling your boss. She's incredibly
Don't talk about how much she is.
She makes herself a little snack, a popsicle, a banana, and finally, a hot dog. And eating them in that weird order, that's not a proper meal. It's called the high. I can crush you anytime I want.
And then the second one, just get off this as well, from where that one is. Action. Yeah, very popular, apparently. I found quite a lot for this. Obviously there are lots of sound effects, so kind of for all the car driving bits, lots of sort of crashing and blowing up and everything. Lots of action films that have quite physical feats. So kind of like, lots of actors nowadays do their own stunts. So people like Cameron Diaz, Tom Cruise, Jackie Chan, all do their stunts. There's lots of very bigged up fight scenes, like in Kill Bill. It's just mad. There's a quest or a journey that is usually found. Although it might not be obvious, there's always something that the main protagonist is trying to find, and it usually leads to something like treasure at the end, or something that, yeah. There's lots of very, very exotic settings. I sometimes envy these people because they film in like places like New Zealand, the Bahamas, stuff like that. It's supposed to keep the audience on the edge of their seat, however it doesn't always work because it just doesn't. Usually there is a tiny bit of comedy in action because there's always going to be sort of a very high tense bit of high intensity scene, and the protagonist then sort of diffuses that slightly with a witty comment, although they're usually quite bad. There's always going to be someone that's innocent, whether that means that's one person or a group of people that's always caught in the crossfire and sometimes ends up dead. The protagonist is, at the beginning, they're always portrayed as a very normal person who doesn't do much. Like, there's a new film coming out, I can't remember what it's called, I think it's called Super, and it's basically about some guy whose wife leaves him and he then becomes a superhero because that spurred him on to try and win it back, and he fights crime using a spanner. And this is an action run. Which one's this? I can't remember which way I put the videos in. Skip it. Which one's this? Oh, this is... skip this one. And then I did sci-fi. Lots of computer and in the future stuff. There's lots of reference to science. Obviously, in kind of like the stereotypical sci-fi, like Star Wars, you have sort of lasers and lightsabers and people with superpowers and jumping around doing stuff. Usually it's in the future. An interesting fact is that there was once a sci-fi film shot in Shanghai, and they didn't have to do any special effects because it's so futuristic looking. Yeah. Yeah, very much so. There always seems to be aliens in it, which is not good. Well, it depends. Or else there are just people that pretend to be aliens, and if they're non-terrestrial, they usually try and put the blame on them. The style of music is also very different from the rest of them, whereas action's sort of lots of sort of pumped up chords. This uses more synthesizers and it's slightly slower and slightly more sort of electronic and dancey than the rest of them. Although it usually has a very happy ending, like in Star Wars, where Anakin dies and everyone has a party. And it's very futuristic. And then there's one. We'll watch this one. No, it won't. Get the next one. I can't remember which one this is either. Oh, I can't. This is Priest, by the way, if you didn't know. Or just skip it. And that's the end.
The introduction.